Okay.
Dionysus. Dionysus, the ivy-wreathed god of wine, cultivated the vineyards on Mount Tmolus, which grew near the clear waters of Pactolus River in Lydia. One day, when the Maenards and Satyrs who followed him gathered nearby, Dionysus noticed that Silenus, his dearest friend and advisor, was not present.
Silenus, who was old and drunk, had danced about the fields and had lost his way. Phrygian pheasants had found him, playfully had bound him with greenery, and had taken him to their king, Midas, while a wreath of ivy still covered his head.
Come to me.
Midas! In the past, King Midas had learned the rites of loud-roaring Dionysus from the great minstrel Orpheus. Therefore, when he observed the wreath on the old man's head, Midas recognized that Silenus was a companion of the wine god and entertained him royally for 10 days and nights. On the 11th day, King Midas took Silenus through the Lydian fields until they found the ivy-wreathed god.
The wine god offered it to a person whose choice showed poor judgment. Midas responded,
Let everything I touch be gold.
Dionysus was disappointed that the king could think of no better wish than this foolish one. However, having sworn to grant whatever Midas requested, the ivy-wreathed god kept his word. King Midas was overjoyed with Dionysus' gift. He left the god with a smile lighting his face. He could not contain his desire to experiment on the nearest object to see if, in fact, the ivy-wreathed god had truly given him his wish. Midas cautiously plucked a green leaf twig from a low-hanging branch of a slender oak tree. Scarcely believing what his eyes revealed, Midas saw that the little branch quickly glittered with tinkling golden leaves.
Next, the king grabbed a lump of earth in his hand. The dirt became transformed into a chunk of gold ore. Now, passing a farmer's field, Midas tore off a stalk of corn. He found himself holding husks of gold which bent over to reveal row upon row of tiny gold kernels within.
Pulling an apple off a nearby tree, the king felt as if one of the immortal Hesperides had given him one of Hare's golden apples.
King Midas had returned home with a hearty appetite. In preparation for dinner, a servant entered carrying a basin and a pitcher of water. As the servant poured water over the king's hands, so that he could wash them, a shower of golden rain streamed into the basin below. Midas was bedazzled by his new power. While his imagination dwelled among these golden wonders and dreamed of even greater miracles to come, his servant spread a lavish meal of bread and meats before him. The smell of freshly baked bread was irresistible. Midas's gleaming dreams disappeared as he picked up a roll. He found himself holding a shiny mass of gold. Next, he tried to eat the meat. It looked invitingly tender and tasty upon the platter, but it became solid gold plate between his teeth. It was beautiful to the eye, but absolutely inedible. Becoming frantic, the king decided to drink his wine. Since it was already in golden goblet, he was certain that at least he could satisfy his increasing thirst. However, once the liquid touched his mouth, it too became transformed into gold. There Midas sat, with liquid gold running down the sides of his face. His servants tried not to laugh at the remarkable yet pitiful sight. First with his golden touch, King Midas felt poor in the midst of incalculable wealth. He was starving for food, yet his riches could not feed him. He was parched with thirst, yet his wealth could not satisfy his need. He began to detest the gold he had desired and to loathe the power he had acquired. Raising his arms, he prayed to the god who had given him his wish.
Oh, ivy-wreathed Dionysus! Help me! I have erred. I have used your generous gift unwisely. Pity me and free me from this golden curse.
Dionysus pitied the repentant king and released him from his golden touch.
Go to the crystal waters of the Pactolus River.
He directed.
That flow by the Lydian city of Sardis. Walk upstream towards the river source. There, where the waters issue forth from their rocky bed like a foaming fountain, dive in. Let the waters wash the golden touch from your body. King Midas obeyed the god's command. He cleansed his body of the golden gift. He transferred the charm to the waters of the river. To this day, the waters of the Pactolus contain flecks of gold, which wash their shores with glistening gold grains. Thereafter, Midas hated the wealth that the god caused him such pain, and spent his time outdoors enjoying nature. His companions became the shepherd god, Pan, and the nymphs who lived in the mountains, caves, and played in the woods and meadows. However, changing environment did not improve the king's judgment.
God delighted in playing simple little melodies on his reed pipes for the pleasure of Midas and the nymphs. Resting on the side of Mount Tmolus one sparkling day, Pan bragged to his companions that his music was superior to great Apollo's. The Lord of the Silver Bow heard this boast and agreed to contest his musical skills with Pan. Both gods agreed that Tmolus, the mountain god, would be their judge.
Tmolus, quite regal in appearance, sat upon his mountain which seemed to brush the sky. He raised his head above the murmuring trees in order to clear their branches from his ears. And he wore as his crown an oak wreath whose acorns dangled on his brow. When both contestants were ready, Tmolus announced,
Pan, god of shepherds, now your judge listens, begin to play. Pan tuned his pipes and blew a simple melody. His music pleased the taste of all the nymphs and also Midas, who was listening nearby. Then the mountain judge turned to far-shooting Apollo. As Tmolus turned, his woods followed his movement and also stood at attention. Play. Lord of the Silver Bow had bound his long golden hair with laurel leaves.
his robe dyed with Phoenician purple swept the ground. With his left hand he raised his lyre of Indian ivory set with precious jewels. In his right hand he held the plectrum. His relaxed yet regal stance indicated the presence of a master musician. As great Apollo played, he pleased the ear and calmed the heart of the judge.
Tmolus announced,
Pan, you must concede your rustic reed to far-shooting Apollo's lead.
The audience applauded the verdict of Tmolus, except for King Midas. The foolish king argued that the decision was unjust, since Midas preferred the shepherd god's country music. Apollo took revenge upon Midas for his poor taste and even more poor judgment. He wanted to expose the king's stupidity to everyone. Therefore, thinking that Midas's ears did not deserve their human shape, he transformed them into which he felt more appropriately indicated their owner's sensibility. He lengthened the king's ears, covered them with long gray and white hairs. He made them so unstable where they attached to Midas's head that they flopped about whenever the king moved in any way. Midas's appearance remained human, for the god intended to punish only the part of the king which had displeased him. Consequently, from that time until his death, Midas was forced to wear a pair of ass's ears upon his head. King Midas covered his shame with a red turban. However, he could not conceal the source of his embarrassment from the servant who always cut his hair long. The poor servant now knew a secret which he could hardly contain. He did not dare reveal his king's deformity, yet he could not bear to remain silent. Therefore, the servant found an isolated area where he dug a shallow pit. Kneeling down upon the ground, he leaned over the hole and whispered into it that the king wore ass's ears upon his head. Then he replaced the dirt he had removed and quietly left the area. A group of whispering reeds grew upon the spot. By the end of the year, they had become large enough to disclose the king's secret whenever the light south winds rustled them. To this day, the reeds repeat the servant's words and make the secret of Midas's ears known to anyone who will listen.